So it is getting on to lunchtime, and I just have a hankering for some broccoli salad. And I decided I was going to make some, and I thought, why not bring you along, show you if you've never made it before, how quick and easy it is, and super delicious. Broccoli, admittedly, is my favorite vegetable. People think I'm kind of weird, but it's true. Let me know down in the comments what's your favorite vegetable, and do people think you're weird because you like it? Let's get to making our broccoli salad. So first up, it calls for 3/4 of a cup of mayonnaise. I just kind of eyeball. I'm not a real big measurer when I make this kind of stuff. It doesn't bother me too much. Okay, that should be good. Okay, cleaned off my spatula, and next it calls for about 1/4 cup of sour cream. Calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar. If you don't want that much sugar in there, you can reduce it. I usually go a little over 1.5. Calls for 1.5 tablespoons of white vinegar. And that one ran over a little, so we'll be generous. Be careful the next go round. So then it calls for 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I just usually measure a little bit out in my hand. Calls for 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, but I bumped my tripod. I absolutely love pepper, so I usually go a little heavy on the pepper. And then you will mix this all together. Now the recipe also does call for 1 tablespoon of onion powder, and you can mix that in with this if you want to. I kind of wait until I get the other ingredients in. And sometimes I use a whisk depending on how well the sour cream and mayonnaise meld together, if I have any little clumps. Oh, and I am slopping today. If I have any clumps, then I'll just use a whisk. So now it calls between 4 and 6 cups of finely chopped broccoli. I usually do mine about this size. And this is where I just kind of do my 1 tablespoon of onion powder. And I love onion powder, so I go a little heavy on that too. Calls for 1/2 cup of crumbled bacon. That is not probably quite 1/2 cup. It's probably more like 1/3 of a cup. And I will mix that just a little. And then it calls for 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. And so that the cheese doesn't all clump together, I usually start giving this just a little light mix. And again, if you like to measure precisely, you can use your utensils. I just measure by the heart when I make this because I love all these ingredients. So if I'm a little heavy on one, it doesn't bother me. And it calls for 1/2 cup of salted sunflower seeds. And if you like them, it also calls for 2/3 of a cup of craisins. Now these are dried cranberries. They're not the dried. Our store, we have a Winco store where we are, and there's a lot of stuff in bulk. And I noticed they not only have the sweetened dried cranberries, which is what these are, they have dried cranberries that are unsweetened. So if you are trying to avoid the sugar, you could use those. And then they also have a cherry cran, I don't know if it's a dried cherry and they're just put cranberry juice in it or what. I've never really researched it, but I just buy the sweetened dried cranberries because I use these in a lot of different things. And I probably only go about 1/2 cup on those. But then you just mix it all together. And I usually stick this back in the refrigerator and let it sit for at least an hour just so the flavors have a chance to meld all together. And I'm going to try to do that, but I am just hungry right now and I really want some broccoli salad, so I might just go for it. So now we are all done. If you can see what it looks like. And I didn't wait an hour. I just wanted some. It was so good. If you like all these ingredients, you will really like this.
So we are going to make some coffee cake. I haven't made any for a really long time. This is a recipe that came from my mom and I think from her mom as well. We're going to put in 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. And then I did not have any shortening. It called for a 1/4 cup of shortening. Online, it said you could substitute coconut oil room temperature. So that's what I'm doing here. And if you cook with coconut oil, would you let me know down in the comments below what you think of it? Is it a good substitute? Do you find that it changes the flavor or maybe is a little more oily? I'm just curious because at the end I'm going to kind of recap what I thought, but we're just going to get this all creamed together and then I'm going to scrape down the bowl. Now, also, if you guys have one of those paddles that has the scraper attached to it for a KitchenAid mixer, is it worth it? I'm kind of looking at them, but looking at the price and kind of choking for for just a paddle, but if it's worth it, let me know. So we're gonna cream in the 1 egg, and unfortunately my camera shut off and we added in the flour, baking powder, and the salt and got that all mixed together as well as some milk. Now here I'm just melting 2 tablespoons of butter, and this is for the topping that goes on top. And then we're going to add to that a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 2 tablespoons of flour, and then we're going to mix that all together. And the stove was getting a little hot, so I turned it off because all we really needed it on for was to melt the butter. So I'm just going to get this all mixed until it's all fully incorporated together. And then this is what it ends up looking like when you're all done. And I'm just going to scrape all that goodness off of the spoon. And I remembered after I got that made that I only made a single batch today, and that topping was actually for a double batch. So we're going to have some good topping on our thing today. And if you're wondering what these are off to the left, those are lamb's ears that I'm going to be using in a crafting project. I love to craft, and I'm doing separate videos just on that. So if you are curious and interested, be sure to go to my channel and check out my playlist. I do have one on crafting for Christmas. So I'm just going to scoop in the batter, and again, this is for 1/2 batch. And I'm just going to spread it around as much as possible. I normally, when I do a double batch, I will put down a layer of dough and I will sprinkle in some of that crumb topping in the middle and put the rest of the dough over the top. And of course, I didn't have enough dough to even make that worthwhile with the single batch. So I'm just going to get this all out of here. And yes, I did scrape the bowl off camera. And then I am just going to use my fingers because it's just easier, and grab a hold of this and just crumble it over the top. And I actually do really like it when I make the double batch and put the crumble in between the layers. It just gives such a better depth of flavor to the coffee cake. But because I didn't have that much, I decided that I would just take one of my wooden spoons and kind of press it down in there to try to get it down into the middle of the batter as much as possible. And then I was looking at how much topping was left in my pan, and I was like, oh, holy cow, that is a lot of topping left. But my husband's words were resonating in the back of my head, and he would be like, oh, too much cinnamon sugar goodness? Perfect. So I just dumped it all on top of here, and we baked it for 20 minutes at 375 degrees. And this is what it looked like when it came out. And I felt like the coconut oil made it a little bit different textured, and the bottom browned a little more than it ever does when I do shortening, but it was delicious nonetheless. So now let's go to the garden. So on the way down to the garden, I wanted to show you my rose hips. Aren't they so pretty? I think coming up in some future videos here, I might be using these in making a wreath, perhaps. And over here, I have some more. Now I did cut off several of the blooms because I made rose hip water and witch hazel, but I still ended up with quite a few rose hips. We are inside the garden now, and the first thing I have to do is give these poor babies a treat because, yeah. Now I don't have my tripod, so I'm going to try not to shake you too much. I have some black oiled sunflower seeds and some stale bread. They love it. So first, let's take a look at the lettuce. It is getting bigger. I do have a feeling we're going to have our first freeze before these make it, but I do have frost cloth, so I'm thinking I might put that down. Yesterday I came out and weeded everything, but now I need to come through and put some slug bait in here again, because like this one right here, they are getting chewed up a little bit. So I'm going to do that. Now over here at my cauliflower, I did harvest one very small head off of this one, and I left it uncovered. There is a secondary plant, but as you can see, this is a self-wrapping variety, and it's still very, very wrapped. I don't know if I'm going to get any more cauliflower again before we have a freeze, but we are November 11th. Normally here in our area, the first freeze is around October 20th. That's been pretty typical for my records. But it's November 11th and we haven't even had one, and it doesn't look like we're going to have one still through Thanksgiving. So it's going to be a very oddly warm late fall. So I'm hoping that that will allow me to get at least a couple of cauliflower. I was so looking forward to having like a whole bunch to freeze, but who knows? We'll see. And these are potatoes that when I dug them this summer, I didn't get every little piece of potato out, and they have started to regrow both here and as well as over here. And I just let these go, and they will sometimes freeze back in the winter, but the potato down deep in the soil is still alive, and come spring they'll send up a new green shoot. So I have a couple over here as well. This is a cilantro that we planted that was so itty bitty, and because we are into cooler temperatures, it's not growing as fast. But moving over here to these beds, I have more cilantro in here. That is my spinach. I have a couple more of my butterhead lettuces right there. Over here are the fall carrots that survived the squirrel dig out, which the squirrel dig out was clear over here. They killed all of my carrots, so I put some more cilantro there. And now these are the original cilantros that survived before the squirrels dug up in this bed, and then all the little small ones are the replacement ones that I've done. But I will probably harvest some of this and get it dehydrated, and then hoping that the weather holds out long enough to where I can do the rest a little bit later. My carrots, I don't really have any that are popping or showing any kind of signs of being ready, so thankfully they can tolerate quite a bit of cold, and hoping we get some out of that. My herb bed looking a little messy, but I'll give you a pan over of my main garden area. This was my original garden area. Looks like I still have a lot of things in here. I didn't pull some of the flowers out. I haven't trimmed up the strawberries yet. This little bushy stuff right here is called Bee's Friend. It's a flower, and it, as you can tell, very readily reseeds itself. Let's go over and take a look, and I will show you just how thick these are. I mean, this is not like one plant. This is tons of plants. Isn't that crazy? And I will end up taking most of these out of here, and springtime come along, I'll have more seeds coming up. So not a problem there. But raspberries, I still need to go through and take the dead canes out. And my blueberries, pretty much done with my dead lilies in the center there. Now that they've died back, I can get those clipped up. And down at the greenhouse area, I just need to tidy that up whenever I have a minute. But that's how the garden's looking. Do you have everything put to bed already, or do you still have some fall crops in the ground? Let me know.